I mean, you can say thinking, but even thought, where does thought come from? Where?
From learning about things, from learning, from reading books, from education. We have learned about different.
So our primitive people, they don't have these feelings like some Aboriginal people who can't read or write in Australia.
No, but
hold on, Aboriginal people who cannot read or write have no tradition of literacy.
Yeah, but they learn things in another way.
Okay, so it's not just reading.
When we say
they are peaceful in nature, they have a fantastic culture, but that's changed when English came in.
Right.
But what if other people who don't have these thoughts that you have, their actions affect you and may harm you? Doesn't it need some kind of higher order in order to prevent those people?
I believe in democracy, and I believe in our
Well, let me ask you something about democracy. For instance, in England, 80% of the English people were against bombing Iraq, and yet the government bombed Iraq.
Democratic. We were against bombing Iraq.
So,
the next elections, I hope they will lose.
Yeah, but after what? The best system, but it doesn't work
in practice like it should, but it's the best solution of all worst solutions, I think, democracy. So the idea of people,
Yeah,
the best of the worst, yeah, that's it.
Do you have an alternative for democracy to avoid all that?
well,
Definitely.
I mean, I think, my personal belief is waking people up is what I really feel the most important thing for me to be doing. Like trying to wake myself up and trying to wake others up. One, to alternative ways of looking at things, because I think that we should challenge ourselves constantly, always.
And what means do you have to wake up people?
How do you organize
To wake up? Well, part of
for
it is
a whole community? What is the
Politics.
best way to do that?
Yeah, I don't.
Political
I'm
party, then.
very politics. I don't like political parties very much.
So that's not
I
the way
think
you-
I personally prefer communitarianism. I think that the best human beings are people that can monitor themselves. I would rather have people that actually have internal mechanisms that prevent them from stealing than have police that scare them into not stealing.
That's all.
But I also feel that in order to prevent the temptation of stealing, you have to have more just distribution of wealth. I think that in societies where we spend billions of dollars on weapons and we have old people begging in the streets, I think something is deeply wrong with our society.
We totally agree, but we see no practical alternative for that.
Well,
Because
see, this is where my faith enters in, and we can disagree about this, but for the sake of our argument, my faith enters in because I actually believe that there is a source behind all of this. I don't think this just came in from, it just popped into existence, or over millennia we kind of developed into these thinking, very fascinating, very incredible. I mean, we have eyes, we can see each other. I come from California, I've never met you one time, and here we are speaking in language that we can both understand, and we're having thoughts and thinking. I mean, I find that very extraordinary, and I have a difficult time believing that was just a coincidence. And so I believe that source does communicate to us, and I believe it communicates to us in two ways. One is the way you're talking about. I believe that those thoughts that you have, even though you might not attribute them to that source, those thoughts of, I don't want to harm another person, I actually believe that you were created with those thoughts, that those are, in essence, what in a more poetic language we would call angelic thoughts.
يعني الجرعة لازم تكون خفيفة أول مرة. إذا you come on heavy يبتعدون. يعني
I believe that source does communicate to us, and I believe it communicates to us in two ways. One is the way you're talking about. I believe that those thoughts that you have, even though you might not attribute them to that source, those thoughts of, I don't want to harm another person, I actually believe that you were created with those thoughts, that those are, in essence, what in a more poetic language we would call angelic thoughts. But I also think there's demonic thoughts of people that have thoughts that tell them, take what you want, You know, who cares about that person?
And some of them even do that and,
within themselves.
And see their faith as a source for those.
No, exactly, because we're, yes, and
Some people play with it,
and
yeah.
this is the mind can play big tricks on
Very
it.
cruel things happen.
In the name of religion.
religion.
Yes, and very cruel things in the name of humanity. Secularism, if you look at the 20th century, it was not a religious century. It was actually the absence of religion. It was the first century in which Western man really threw off religion, and yet it's the bloodiest century in human history. We killed 180 million people were killed. I'm saying we human beings. 180 million, most of them civilians. Saturation bombing.
Collateral damage.
Collateral damage.
Yeah.
They didn't have nice euphemisms like that then. But
Maybe
so
the difference is that you believe it could have been prevented by religion, and we do not believe that.
So what about the religious wars in the Middle Ages?
yes, and I think that those are the absence of religion. I think when war, I only believe in a right to defend. I believe that I have a right. If you attack me, I feel that I have not only a right but an instinct that was put in me to defend myself against you. But then the challenge is, once I've overcome you, what do I do then? Do I take revenge? My religion says vengeance belongs only to God. It's not my business to take revenge. If God wants to take revenge, that's his business. My business is actually not to take revenge. And that's where my religion comes in. So I believe a lot of what you don't like about religion, I don't like about religion. Many of the things that you're telling me, I agree with you.
They are not religion. They are misinterpretations.
I think they're misunderstandings, but the same thing can be said about any system of belief. It doesn't have to be religion that causes these things. National Socialism, if you look at what Hitler wanted to do, he wanted everybody to have food on the table. He wanted all the Germans to have cars. He had the Volkswagen made. Volkswagen, the car for the people. He was a vegetarian. He liked children. You know, he had a sense of humor. Yeah, German children. You see. So he wasn't being compelled by a religious. He was being compelled by a nationalistic ideology. I don't think it's wrong to want good for your people, but at the expense of other people, I think there's a problem there. But it wasn't religion that did that to him. It was actually, I would say, in essence, the absence of religion. And I think that those feelings that you have, Elaine, those feelings that you have are actually religious feelings. That's how I see them. I mean,
But on the other hand, if I were a woman and I went to Islam, I would have difficulties because I would not be allowed the same rights as I have now. I mean,
yes, that's a cultural religion.
It's much harder for me.
Yeah, that's a cultural religion. I would say that wasn't true in the Islamic religion. I think that women, what's happened to women in the Muslim world has more to do with the culture of the Muslim world than it does. I mean, I have a wife who's from California. She's a Muslim. She grew up in California. My sister became Muslim. We grew up in a very progressive, liberal, humanistic family.
It's difficult for us, I think, to see the difference.